Hey, hello, hi, welcome to or back to the EquiTheory podcast. I am your host, Jill Treece, and on this week's episode, we're switching it up. We've been doing the book talks, and this week is going to be more of a chillax, just a chat, you know what I mean? Catching you guys up on some things that have been going on for me and the ponies and, filling you in on some things. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this episode. Alrighty guys, before we jump into the content, we got to do some ads. But if you would like to avoid the ads, you can become a premium feed subscriber one of two ways. You can either join Spotify. I open that option so you can subscribe here, and there will be a Google form you can use to submit your questions, or you can subscribe through Supercast and use the Ask Me Anything feature. Either way, you will get access to the premium feed, though I do think with Supercast, if you listen on a different app than Spotify, I think that might be the route to go. I'm not sure what the Spotify integration is on that, but regardless, you'll have the ability to ask me anything and have episodes dedicated to your question and also ad-free. So it's kind of a win-win. But anyway, let's roll those ads so we can get into the content. Okay, so just wanna rock and roll into this episode because, like I said, it's gonna be a little bit more of a chatty one, perhaps, where I'm just talking to you about what's been going on. So on the horse front, we moved Azula fields, which is riveting content, I know, but we got in 2 new mares. So Azula got booted to Zoe's field, which is the old retiree field. I think we have a couple out there that are up there in age. And so we got Zoe and Azula in the same field now. To answer your question, no, they do not get along, which is, I'm sure, going to be a problem to deal with later. But yeah, so Azula's out there now. She's got Rory out there with her. A lot of people, it's so interesting to me, are really invested in Rory. I keep getting questions about him. He's doing super well. Azula is his auntie. She is Auntie Rue because, if you're not caught up on Rory's story, there's an episode a while back on Raina talking about that whole situation, a nightmare. But his mother ended up having really, really horrible long-term chronic feet issues. And she just, her bone went through her soul a month after she gave birth to him due to the hormonal changes. And she was metabolic, had founder laminitis, one of the two. It's been a minute since I've really researched hoof stuff. And all the studying I'm doing for counseling, therapy, psychology, that realm is sort of pushing out. I'm noticing pushing out a lot of the research I did on horse stuff, which is really frustrating for me. But I am, I guess, the type of person that if I don't really stay on top of learning things, I sort of forget and lose some of that education, if you will. But, so she ended up really tragically, in a lot of pain, and we had to make the tough call to euthanize her. And we got Rory a nurse mare that ended up not working out. And then we had to get a second nurse mare. It was a whole disaster. And then they wanted her back, I think when he was about 6, maybe we pushed it to 7 months. Not old enough at all. But that is the way of the world. You wean horses at 6 months, despite every research article on it ever. But, so, her name was Romy, I think True Romance or something like that. She was so sweet. She was such a gem. And, she got sent back, and there was just no fantastic way to do it. Just because they let us know literally the night before he had to go. There was no correspondence, no heads up, or before she had to go. Just okay, we need her back. We're sending transport to pick her up. And we were like, okay, bet. Super. So, but thankfully, Rory was really, he was out 24/7 with the herd that Azula's in. And he was like really a part of that. So the adjustment actually wasn't that bad for him. And I think that speaks a lot to taking the proper welfare protocols and management protocols, like when emergency or unexpected situations do happen where you have to do something that is not, the preferable choice. Like Sunny, my boss, asked the people that owned Romy several times in several different ways. She offered to buy her, to keep her, and because we liked her so much, and they weren't having it, and we're like, we need her back, so please do that. So we tried everything to get her to stay for poor Rory, because we were like, poor kid's been through enough. But anyway, he whinnied for about 10 minutes, and then he went back to the herd, and that was sort of the end of what we could see, the outward expression of like, where'd she go? And that was sort of it, really. And he got close with, I think, I can't even remember if we still had Astro here or not. It's all been such a blur. Horses, it's like a revolving door. But Astro ended up selling, I think, to somebody in like Maine or Massachusetts. And then Dexter is at the trainer right now. He's available for sale. And so he's gone, which is like, oh my God, the babies. Those were the ones that grew up with Rue. And she's the only one of that little cohort left. So, that was the original herd. So Rory really has latched on to Azula. And they're like, Azula loves him and tolerates him, but it's very much a this is my shadow type situation. He comes with us everywhere because, like I said, she's out in the far field with Zoe, and there's this little aisleway, and there are some gates in the aisleway that I can shut to block off to make a little training area. Oops. And when the horses are all in the very back eating their morning alfalfa or whatever, and I want to work with Azula, I gotta bring her up. And she and Rory always come up. So the whole time I'm working with Azula, Rory's just standing there over the fence, very annoyed that he's not participating. But, I straight up don't have time. I barely have time for Azula as it is. But, so that's how Miss Rue's doing. Zoe is also living her best life. She was having some weird issue with her udders this summer when it got really, really hot. They sort of got a little bit bigger and were producing a whitish liquid. So assuming some sort of milk, had the vet out to look at her, and it's just, we have Cowboy Central. He was like, she's fine. I'm like, do you ride her? And I was like, no. And he was like, then why do you care? I'm like, okay. So to sort of paint the picture of what we're working with here, I also know this vet very well. So, that's sort of the rapport. And I'm like, okay, no, can you test her? And he's like, oh, fine. So, he tested her for infection. She was fine. So he was like, I think it's really just the heat. She might be borderline Cushing's. So I think in like March, because there's this program, I guess, whatever testing company he uses, that they have like, you have like 10 free tests or something. And he was like, it's not a pressing issue. She doesn't look like she's suffering. Her feet look great. Her coat looks great. She looks great. So we can just, wait till the test is free instead of spending a couple $100. And I was like, yes, please. So I think we're gonna just do that just to be safe. To me, she doesn't show any symptoms of Cushing's that I can observe, but, then my farrier was like, her feet are great. The only issue that she has been having that I'm a little bit embarrassed to admit because it has been so long, but I'm just not in the position to like really address it. So her hind left, she can't pick it up and take it out behind her. And this sort of, I believe, started happening maybe like, God, I can't remember the timeline. It was post kissing spine surgery. I cannot remember if it was immediately after. I want to say it wasn't. I want to say that took some time. But now she's struggling to take it out behind her. And I've done some digging around in some like bodywork forums. Obviously, I can't find anything online particularly helpful. Just Googling it. So looking at Facebook groups and stuff is about all I got at the moment, because I'm not in a super position to afford bodywork. So we're a bit all over the place financially. But man, in a couple months, I will be able to have a proper therapist job. I can apply for jobs and I can have a salary. And then I will be able to explore this a little bit more, because, oh my God, being an intern, working 8 to 5, 3 days a week, and then like we don't really have any horses here anymore to ride and like flip, and I'm not particularly good at selling horses as is. It's not really my strong suit. I'm not a salesman. But yeah, so I'm hard up for cash, and I could theoretically go get another job, but I'm just, I'm in a fortunate position with my family that, they're supportive of me, and they're like, just focus on school, because I've got to study for the NCE, the National Counselor Examination. That's been my big focus lately, because, oh my God, I got like a 700-page book to read. Quizzing myself over it basically. And it's like, I gotta remember the names of every psychologist ever, and what they did and their theory and what ages their theory occurred, like what stages, each stage has 2 levels within it, and they all occur at different ages, and each is named something different and has a different, like, it's, oh my God, it's my nightmare. And it's not just like, oh, we're studying developmental psychologists this week, you have to memorize the 3. It's like everything, including like counselor theory and multicultural counseling and the ethics of the counseling field and diagnostics. So it's the big one. And a lot of people don't actually take it until they're applying for the terminal licensure. At least in my state, it's licensed professional counselor. But I think there's some benefit that I was told about taking it early. So I'm taking it before I apply for a licensed associate counselor. But that said, I am studying for that and dedicating my free time to that. And so I haven't explored this. That's my long-winded justification of why I haven't explored this with Zoe. Also with her, part of my apprehension is that when we start looking, we find, and, I'm a little bit nervous of what we'll find. And I realize that that's not a reason to not investigate something that's causing pain. But, okay, so let me explain what's happening first before I give this preamble so you can hear me. So she cannot pick her hind left foot up off the ground and extend it back behind her, like as if she were to kick out behind her. She can pull it forward, and she is quote unquote sound, walk, trot, canter. She's not like limping or visibly off on it. But it's the putting it out behind her, and that's what it's making me think it's like maybe high up in the pelvis somewhere. And okay, so back to my preamble. I'm not sure what would be causing that, and we don't have particularly like high-level sports medicine vets out here. I had my vet look at her when he looked at the at her udders, and he was like, again, you don't ride her, do you? Like, what is the point of investigating this? And I was like, because I care about her welfare, and my farrier has to trim her hooves by pulling it forward. So thankfully I have a very patient farrier who tries with her every time, and she just drops the foot like it's dead weight. She can't like even tip it up onto her toe. You have to bring it forward up towards her elbow. And so he does it like that, and, we'll look at the underside of it, and he's able to trim her that way. But obviously it would be better if she could extend it behind her, and not being able to is indicative of something is wrong. But like I said, we have sort of the backyard version of vets, very knowledgeable, wonderful people. But as far as like investigative and like if you can get it done, it's kind of fine. So it's a little bit difficult to explore things of that nature. Because like I said, I got she's sound. She's like, I don't know what to tell you. Why does it matter? I'm like, because she needs to get her feet done, and God forbid something happen. So I'm butting up against that a little bit, but hoping to get some body work done on it. And I've watched some videos on different, like, I think it's I want to say iliopsoas release. Maybe I'm adding ilia to sacroiliac. I don't know. But the psoas, which I believe is a muscle that maybe connects your spine to your pelvis somewhere. It's really deep in your pelvis. But from my memory, that's what I'm remembering. But I'm thinking it's somewhere in there. I'm really, really, really hoping it's not related to the kissing spine surgery, in which case that would be very bad if there was like, some sort of ligament damage to where it like physically can't happen anymore. But I mean, like when she trots and canters, the leg moves out behind her, right? It's just holding it there. She physically just drops her leg. And Zoe's, it's not obviously a behavioral thing. She's not like that. She's always been the horse that if you walk up to a leg, she'll pick it up before you get there. She's very polite and understands what the farrier wants. So her dropping it tells me something is up that she can't. So just sort of like, don't know what that's about, and a little bit afraid to look, a little bit not in the financial position to, and a little bit the vets are not super helpful. Always, sometimes very much so. Other times, like the things like, oh, they have, a sinus infection. Here's the medicine for that. And it's wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. We're good. That sort of thing, like clear issue, clear treatment. The things that are a little bit muddier or a little bit harder to get to the bottom of. But yeah, I'm hoping once my financial situation is a little bit better, I can inquire to some body worker people and see if they have any ideas on helping that. Because I'm worried that if it is related to her kissing spine surgery, that it might be, irreversible. And I hope that's not the case. I hope it's just a lack of, using, and that maybe some pole work and some rehab work would help with that. Again, time, money is always the forever issue here. So, we'll see, but that's sort of where we are with Zoe and Azula. And that has been my big dark secret looming with Zoe. Like I said, she can get her feet done. She does not appear lame. And I know that I'm emphasizing that because obviously if she can't pull her leg back, she is, depending on your definition of lame, there's definitely an issue there, and we need to investigate that. It's not been able to be a priority for me, and that's not all the way acceptable on my part, and I feel bad about that. But let's move on. Let's not dwell on my bad horsekeeping. But yeah, I mean, and that's not to say also that I haven't had a body worker look at her. It was sort of a chin scratcher moment of like, I don't really know what to do here. But yeah, so I've used the resources I have right now. It's going to require a little bit more than what I have at the moment. So here's to over explaining. Oh my God. But yeah, so back to Azula. I'm sort of a bit overwhelmed with training, I guess. And this might be a useful topic to touch on because, I obviously started this podcast as a positive reinforcement training podcast. And, solving and answering behavioral questions. And like I said a few episodes ago, it's way easier to look at somebody else's issue and break it down and work through it. But with your own horse, for some reason, sometimes it gets a little bit muddy. And I'm definitely dealing with that in the way that I feel like there's so much. It is really overwhelming for me, at least, to start a horse. I know some people just like dive in head first and they tackle everything and it works out beautifully, and you can start them, being okay to ride and without tack, and it just works as this beautiful like black stallion moment. Obviously not, it requires a lot of time and dedication, but I look at trainers like that and I'm like, oh God, like, what am I doing? And what's crazy to me and is so like just humbling and incredible is a lot of the trainers that I see do that. They will say kind things to me and credit me in part to their ability to have done this with their horse. And I'm like, oh my God, I gave too much of the game away here. I just passed the torch too early. I should have held on to it a little longer, I think, and figured it out a little bit more before I gave it to everyone. But I think that also speaks a lot to their personal dedication to, horses and training and putting the pieces together, differently, quicker, whatever. And that's not to say that I see myself at this massive deficit or anything, or I am forever honored and like just so grateful and proud to have played any role in bringing, more conversation around positive reinforcement, bringing it to more of a household conversation, like our attack room conversation, if you will, that like more people know about it. I am so proud of my role in helping with that. There are amazing names in the industry that I like with my platform of, JETEquiTheory, Jet Eventing at the time, to be able to lift up their voices and their wisdom was, I feel very privileged to have been able to do that. And to have helped so many horses and riders to uncover the magic, I guess, of working with your horse in a different way. And so in that regard, absolutely. On the other hand, I'm like, shit, I want to be able to do that. And so I know that I can, and I know that Azula is more than forgiving. So it's not so much perfection paralysis. It's a problem with consistency also. But also just sort of, I forget what the term is, but there's this sort of ADHD term, or phenomena, I guess, of sort of needing an umbrella task to be broken down step by step by step by step. I need a shaping plan, basically, for this big umbrella topic of starting horse under saddle. I'm like, okay, so obviously she needs to be good with tack. She needs to understand rein cues left and right. She needs to primarily understand whoa and halt, do not move. She needs, her duration is severely not developed. My rate of reinforcement is always very high. So mostly because I started her out working with scratches. So with food, it's a little more salient sometimes. Sometimes it's not, sometimes it is, but I find that she can get a little bit frustrated if the reinforcement is, or the rate of reinforcement is too low. And that's just, she's a young horse and I haven't been super diligent with her. Most of my work with Azula has been just existing with her and sort of, what is her name? She did Taming Wild, Elsa Sinclair, I think. Sort of that approach, just being with and existing with and just being around them, observing them, learning them. And I feel like I sort of unintentionally took that path a little bit more with her. And so the formal training has been a much slower, sporadic sort of schedule. And, right now I have some of the weekend days. I've got 4 days that I'm not working in office, but there's so much else to do. My God. It's not like the internship is my only source of stress or busyness. So, today I'm recording instead of being out there working with her because I also have to make all the social posts for it. And I think I might back off of that a little bit, to be honest, because it's just too much at the moment. So we'll see what happens. I don't know. I'm all over the place, but, I do feel like it's a worthy conversation of saying that, like, I am genuinely overwhelmed with the prospect of starting Azula. And I think that my sort of online persona has given off this impression, that like I really know what I'm doing and I know what I'm talking about. And I have some serious imposter syndrome when it comes to my own horse. And just sort of in general, the fact that anybody would pay me for, training their horse is wild. So, the fact that it's happened is crazy. And so with Rue, it's like, I don't know. I'm like, where do I start? Versus if somebody had brought me this horse and said, this horse needs this address, then I feel like I would have a very clear path to it. And part of me also is a little bit on the fence because I'm also exploring Warwick's methods and sort of that attunement-based training and using more of polyvagal theory and things like that. And I have his book, and I'm a couple chapters deep, but then I get to where I'm like, I can't read a book without taking notes on it. And then that changes when I'm able to read the book. And then I'm like, I shouldn't be reading this. And then I should be reading the one that, has my study materials in it. And then it's overthinking for sure. But, I want to explore some of his methods too. And then I'm sort of in this paralysis situation of like, there's so much to train. I'm not sure what route I want to take. And, somebody asked me on Instagram, like, my thoughts now, this day and age on, using mixed reinforcement, positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement. And as a general, I would say avoid it as much as possible. Obviously, there are going to be times where negative reinforcement happens, in different circumstances. Sometimes it's unavoidable. And I don't necessarily believe that it should be avoided at all costs. I do believe it is responsible to, at least in part, expose horses to pressure and teach them how to yield to pressure. Now, can you teach them to yield to pressure through positive reinforcement? Yes, absolutely. You certainly can. But at least in my opinion, I wouldn't want Azula's first time being caught in a field and having somebody pull on a lead rope to be, earth shattering for her. So some preparation, some exposure to that in a kind, slow, successive, approximated way, I think is responsible. Because, like if Sean, my boyfriend, were to go get her from the field, I don't know why he would, but if that were to happen, and he's maybe a bad example because I feel like he would be too gentle, like to the point of being like, we'll walk when she wants to walk. I'm not even going to use the lead rope at all. But like, I don't know if the farrier went to catch her or the vet or, at one point I was sick. I think it was when I had COVID, the one and only time, knock on wood, that the girl that was working here at the time feeding, had to go catch Azula and she couldn't catch her. And, then, so I had to get up out of bed and go catch her. And at the time I hadn't gone to the doctor yet. So I was like, it was like day one where I sort of went downhill very quickly and, was laying in bed and got a phone call. And I was like, okay, I'm just letting you guys know I'm very sick right now. I don't know what's happening. And so I'm walking down there like zigzagging because I feel like I'm about to pass out, definitely have a fever. And I told both of them that, and they were like, we'll keep our distance. I was like, okay, let me go catch my goofy filly. And it's very easy to catch her. She's not hard to catch, but like if you approach her and try to like just manhandle her, she's very suspicious of that. So more people need to halter her. Like, she'll let Sunny catch her. She lets me catch her. But, I mean, part of me respects that about her. And then the other part of me is like, if anything were to happen to me, to Sunny, and she just, I don't know, wasn't a part of my or my family's life anymore, I don't want it to be this horrible experience for her. I feel like it's my responsibility to address that. Because if you hold out the halter for her, she'll put her nose in it and then take it out really quick. And if you raise the halter to go put it on, then she's out of there. She's like, no, thank you. But if you just continue holding it, she'll put her nose in it and then you can put the halter on, no issue. And she's always been like that since I halter broke her. And part of that is probably, maybe I built that into the behavior. And so, okay, there's a bug on my face. So maybe I built that into the behavior. It's very likely that I did. So it's something I need to go back and sort of clean up. But again, like, oh my God, so many things to train, so many things to fix and to teach and flesh out. And so I feel like I need to write out a list of everything I need to teach her and then go through every single thing and break down how do you teach those things. And sort of get really clear on what I'm doing. Because I find that on the days where I'm like, okay, I actually have time to like go work with her, I'm like, what do I work on again? And so like the other day, the first thing I did was go out and put her in that little in-between area, and we worked on targeting, because I was like, I think her quote unquote manners around food is not fantastic last I remember. But apparently I've worked on it since then, because she used to be pretty bad about being in the treat pouch, just because I'd never worked with her on it. And when we moved farms, I didn't really have a good protected contact spot. So it was sort of difficult to get that initial training in. And so finally got that under control. And I was working with her the other day, and she was fantastic with that, had no issue staying out of the treat pouch, was very respectful. And I say respectful, you guys know what I mean, in that she was keeping her head in between her shoulders and her chest. And every now and again, she'll like, I'll click and she'll come over to me and then follow my hand back to the center. But she's slowly getting that, like, we stay in the center. And sometimes after I cue a behavior and click, I'll wait a second for her to be like, oh, and self-correct and go back to the center and then feed. But I worked with her a lot on targeting. She's very good about target versus touch, which obviously touch is to touch the target object, and to target is to follow without pinning her ears, which is where I screwed up with Zoe. I accidentally created a lot of frustration, sort of built that into that behavior by moving it a lot and waiting until she touched it to click. Versus Azula, I'm very careful to always reinforce far before she gets close to it. And so with her, just sort of working on some desensitizing systematically, working on like the saddle pad, and it flapping and like lifting it up, and just not being super gentle and like, this is how we slowly put the saddle pad on. Sometimes it comes up just a little bit faster, sometimes it flops over before it moves on to the horse. So just little things like that, sort of deflapping, but not in the flooding sense where I just do it and then I click her and feed her, in the sense that like we're building up very, very slowly to each of those things. And something that I noticed from the first couple of times I've worked on this is I've sort of built in this raising her head behavior. When I lift the saddle pad, her head sort of comes up, which is a natural reaction, but now it's sort of happening every time. So the other day I was working with her, and it was very much on, can you keep your head low and relaxed while I do this? So I had to back all the way up and start from just clicking her for just not reacting, essentially just existing and allowing it to happen. Touch the saddle pad, put it on, and the head stays where it is. So, sort of all of those things, but, yeah, basically just really overwhelmed with, just training in general, because it's not something where I'm working with 4 or 5 horses every day anymore. And I am just, horses are my life. I'm living and breathing it and reading about it and studying it. And like somebody asked me a question the other day about like something in current events in the horse world. And I was like, I have no idea. Like they wanted my take on it. And I was like, I have no idea how to give you my take on this, because I don't know what you're talking about. And I looked forever to find it and couldn't find anything about it. I had no idea what they were talking about. So, that's just sort of the frustration that I have, with being out of this for so long. And part of me is wondering if it's time to accept that I just get to live my quiet little horsey life and I don't really need to be on social media. I keep fighting this sort of feeling like impending transition, but, I remember everyone always asking me when I was like really big on Instagram or YouTube, like, how long do you think you'll do this? And I was like, I don't know. I feel like I'm either going to do it forever, or there's going to be a natural sort of fade out where if it's not going to be my end all be all, then it's not going to be like at the forefront of my life. And so, I struggle a lot with the social media thing of like, oh, I'm not posting enough, or I'm not like being interactive enough. I can't create enough creative content, like I see everybody else doing. And then I have to remind myself, like, this is their full-time job, and not the social media part, but like living and breathing horses. So it comes more naturally. It's a part of your world and your life already. And, by, I guess, the nature of switching to more focusing on my career as a therapist has made that transition sort of not all the way my choice, but also my choice, because like I love being a therapist. I love helping people. I love getting to talk to people about their lives and what's going on for them, and being able to be a supportive figure in that way, and, help work through things. And I feel like that is a major, major, major passion of mine. And I feel like I've always had this sort of Robert Frostian equation, I guess, where it's like I've got the road diverged in the wood, 2 roads what's the quote? But like where I've got 2 paths and neither is wrong, but it's going to make all the difference. And I really feel like I've learned over the past few years, especially in getting very close to and finally practicing as a counselor, that I was going to have to choose. And there was a time that I was like, I'm going to do horses full time. It's going to be everything. And it's just not. It's not my everything. And that sucks. That's really hard. And I think 14-year-old me would be having a mental breakdown about this. But 14-year-old me also said she wanted to be a therapist, So I was always like, that'll be my real person career, my adult career. And then I'll do horses on the side, or I'll become an Olympian. Whatever happens. But I think for me, at least from what feels like, my truth, I guess, is that horses were meant to be a passion for me, and they're meant to be an escape and sort of a solace place, rather than something that I put on display and that I have to create content around and, feel, I don't know, like every moment I've got to capture on film. And like part of me is like that anyway. Like part of me strictly enjoys filming and having footage and being able to watch it and edit it. And that's what got me into YouTube and stuff. But somewhere along the way, mostly when the copyright rules on YouTube changed and they sort of started cracking down on that, and then it was less creative. I'm having to use songs I'm not crazy about, and a little bit more restricted in that way. It sort of took the fun out of it. And, I wanted it to be more of an artistic expression, if you will. But I don't know. I've always loved the filming and having sort of those visual representations of moments. And like when I'm with Azula, I'm always like, oh, I want to be filming this. And it's that taking time off from the internet has sort of shifted that view from I should be filming right now. What am I going to post in a couple months to I want to, just for me though. I don't really want to post. And but then there are other times that I'm like, I do want to post this and I want to share about this. So I feel like I'm in this constant little battle of like, what do I want this to be these days? And it's really hard for me to outline and define it because I really would like to use Instagram and my platform as sort of a, this is what I'm doing here, have at it. This is sort of like a blog back in the olden days where you just had a blog about your life and your thoughts and shared sort of a scrapbook snapshot of your life. But, that's Instagram now has, I don't need to go on a rant about that, but it's really businessy, and the level of content, the standard of content, I should say, like what is good content that, does well, attracts views that people want to see. Like a picture of my horse in a field is not as engaging as a picture of Zoe, or like the video of the TikTok I made of Zoe where I was talking about trauma and horses, and I just picked a random clip of her, obviously having a sort of a panic situation where she was bucking and rearing. That did crazy numbers. And that was sort of I don't love that like the direction I'm moving is obviously a lot of boring content. I know positive reinforcement trainers out there are nodding their heads about this, that it's really, really hard to do well on social when your content is very boring, because that's how horse training should be. It's not supposed to be explosive, and you don't always get the before shots, and you don't really want to induce that in the animal. So it's tricky. And I also don't want to feel any amount of like, I don't know, like part of me is also protective over my relationship with my horses these days, where I'm like, it's for me and them. It's not necessarily for the world to see and to share all the time. And there was a time where I really loved that. And I think a lot of that had to do with where I was at in life and not having super close attachments and friends. And I did have some, but they were like my close friends didn't live anywhere near me at the time. And so there was that distance that, the social media sort of filled that void, and it allowed me to have a community and to have friends and to feel like I belonged and I mattered and that I was important. And to me, that is invaluable. It offered me the community that I really, really needed, because like I've said a million times, Arkansas is not my end all be all. At least my hometown of Little Rock has not been, it's just, I've never really felt like I fit in super well here. There's very much hunting culture and going to church every Sunday. Everybody has a Southern accent, and it's very much that way. And a lot of people who aren't like that like to go out and to party. And it's never really been my thing. I'm more of I like to hike and be outdoors in nature and work with horses and to, philosophize about health and wellness and things like that. And it's a very different culture here. And, neither is right or wrong or better or worse. It's just different. And I just don't feel like I have fit in super well here my whole life. So to have the internet and to be accepted for who I am, what I value, what I'm interested in was a really, really big, huge thing for me. So like I said, forever grateful for that. And, things change. And that's been a really difficult thing for me, I think, to come to terms with. I think many of you who have been listening to the podcast for a while probably have noticed that, I'm a bit on and off with it. I am a bit all over the place. And I think that is largely to do with sort of this conundrum of like, sometimes I'm really, really motivated and it's all I can think about. It's all I want to do. And I can't wait to do it. And then other times it's like, I just dread it. And so part of me is like, maybe I move off to a, not a every week schedule, but then I'm like, are you going to post at all? And part of me wants to do it. I think the goal I've set for myself is until December, because after December happens, I've been talking to people where I work and sort of what it's like working full-time in community mental health. And it's about like 8 to 5, potentially 8 or 7 to 6 or 7 because of the nature of the beast. I mean, sometimes people don't show up to their appointments, and at the facility I'm looking at, you have to hit a certain quota. And if you don't, if people don't show up or you don't schedule enough, or you don't have enough availability for people, then sometimes you end up taking a pay cut as a result. So, it's something I think that is going to require all of my attention, and, something where I don't know that I'm going to be able to keep this up. So I sort of at least want to do it through the rest of this year and sort of finish out strong, sort of. Saying that a lot today, but, yeah, I don't know. I also read a lot of you guys' comments on the survey, and a lot of it was, there were several that kept saying like, we can really tell when you're not enjoying podcasting, when it's not coming to you naturally, when it feels like you're pulling teeth to get an episode out. And those are not usually the best episodes. And I think that's super fair. I definitely agree. Sometimes I get into it where I feel like I can just talk forever and I've got everything to say, or I have an interesting topic. But when I don't have anything to say, it's like, oh, okay, nothing. I got nothing. So, yeah. How did I get here? But yeah, I think it's only fair to you guys to be upfront about sort of where I'm at. Right now, my plan is to continue every week, and if something changes, I will let you know. But I know that I was talking about like mixing reinforcements, and if I heard this quote once about like, if you're going to do a method, I believe it was maybe Warwick that even said it, like if you're going to do a method, follow it all the way to the letter. And if not, you're going to discard the method. And I think that's what happens a lot with positive reinforcement, right? People try it. They are like, I'm going to use food rewards with my horse. And then it doesn't go according to plan. Maybe they learn a little bit more about positive reinforcement and go troubleshoot, and maybe it still doesn't work. Because let's be real, it does require quite a bit of investment in your own education. A lot of it's self-taught, and it can be difficult to like really do it well. Because if your timing's not super great, if you're not super tuned into horse body language, you might not notice the little things. And some people aren't like hyper observant like that. And so it can be a little bit more difficult to be successful immediately. So, like he said, if you're going to do somebody's method, you need to follow it to the letter and you need to get good at it. And then you can start like sort of bridging off. And so that resonated with me a lot because, I sort of have the tendency of like taking pieces and then sort of trying to mash it together, and it doesn't always work. But a lot of his work and his teachings really do resonate with me. Sort of that, like I said, attachment theory, polyvagal based methods, I think is really interesting. And I want to learn more about it. And I also have seen, the effect that it has on the horses that he works with. And I think it's a really, really interesting approach. So I'd like to learn more about it and sort of integrate the two, because I am also in a unique position with Azula, who does not have a history of really, to compare Zoe and Azula, Zoe has a very, very long, lengthy history of negative experiences with negative reinforcement, where she has been pressured, she has been flooded, she has been escalated emotionally, and, forced into a lot of things that she didn't want to do with it, and positive punishment. So, with Azula, she doesn't get like offended by pressure on the lead rope or me touching her leg, you know? So it's sort of a catch-22 of like, there's a lot of pressure in the world, and pressure on its own is not bad. Is it, you know, coercive? Can it be coercive? Absolutely. Can positive reinforcement be coercive? Absolutely. It is all in how you use it. Now, my opinion will forever be that it is far easier to use or misuse and abuse positive or negative reinforcement and positive punishment because, you know, those can be severely psychologically damaging. Positive reinforcement can create issues as well, but the psychological fallout is often not anywhere near that of some of the more coercive methods. But to, you know, put my hand on Azula's hip and push and, you know, she moves away from it and steps over, I do not think that is affecting her negatively psychologically. Especially since she doesn't have that history, right? You know, Zoe gets anxious and she gets very stressed when you start using pressure with her. Azula does not. Azula doesn't change. And so I think it's about the horse's learning history just as much as anything else. Does that mean that I want to train Azula with negative reinforcement? No. Does that mean that I am averse to mixing more with her? No. So I'm more willing to use some of the more like, I don't know, like leading her with a lead rope and a halter versus being super diligent about teaching her targeting and transferring that cue to that, to where the lead rope is just sort of a fail-safe. You know what? I hope I'm making myself sort of clear here. I feel like this is extremely nuanced, but that's not to say that I mean, I can't know exactly, but right now my inclination is that when I do start riding Azula, I'm not going to, you know, be kicking and using all sorts of leg pressure. I would like to teach cues via that pressure instead of, you know, I feel like we've had this nuanced conversation many times on this podcast. I wish I could point out the exact episodes. I believe it was probably in the ones with Kane Meyer over positive reinforcement riding, but just leg pressure or rein pressure or physical, just touching the horse anywhere pressure is not inherently bad. Tactile is not inherently bad. How it's taught, like if I taught Azula to go forward faster by kicking, increasing the pressure, and she is moving forward or faster as a result of trying to escape the pressure, i.e. negative reinforcement, then probably no. So I would like everything she does to be motivated by the reward, right? The positive reinforcement. So that's sort of the nuance of the conversation on mixing reinforcements, right? Is it's hard to know what is the true motivation for the horse. So like a horse like Zoe that's traditionally trained, if I go and, you know, grab her from the field and I put a lead rope and a halter on her and I pull on the lead rope and she yields to the pressure and begins to follow it, and then I click and treat, she is not yielding to that pressure because she knows she's going to be reinforced with a an appetitive, a food reinforcer. She is moving forward because she's yielding to the pressure to get the release of the pressure. Whereas Azula, who has been trained with positive reinforcement to follow the lead rope, you know, if I lift the lead rope, she is going to move forward because she has been positively reinforced for it. Over time, does it transfer? Arguably. But, you know, I always give her scratches for following the reinforcer. So she has had that history built up of positive reinforcement. So, like I said, it's always hard to know what the true motivation is because you can't directly ask them. But that's sort of my stance on it, is that if the motivation for the behavior is the positive reinforcement, I don't really have an issue using negative reinforcement as sort of a secondary thing that's happening, which I guess it's not really then, is it? I mean, maybe it can co-occur, but maybe it's more accurate to just say it's pressure on the lead rope in the example of Azula sort of appearing to yield to the pressure because of the appetitive. I don't know. That's an interesting conundrum, isn't it? Interesting discussion. I'm sure there's an answer out there. I don't have it on me in my brain today. But yeah, I didn't expect to talk so long about that. That was supposed to be the updates. But I do think that I'm going to go ahead and end it here because everybody and their mother has decided now is the time to text and call me, and I have some things to attend to. So I want to thank you guys endlessly for listening to the rambling, and I hope that there's something comforting in that, particularly the bit about being overwhelmed, because that's something that's very difficult for me to be honest about, but I feel like is something beneficial for me to be honest about. I feel like I don't know. I feel like everybody sort of gets in that headspace where they're like, everybody else is finding this so easy and it's so hard for me. And to know that there are others out there that are also finding it quite difficult, I think is reassuring. So, we're all in this together. And I don't know. I just thank you guys for listening and allowing me to have a little bit of sounding board here. I appreciate it, and I will catch you guys in the next one.